Okay, Philip, first of all, thank you for being here today to tell us something about yourself and the things you are working with. I've heard your name over and over for so long, but I never dived deep into your story. Now my time has come. And first of all, of course, I'm interested in your personal story, of course. What is your relation to the UFO topic? What happened to you? What did you see and how did it influence and change your life?
Yes, and thank you, Daniel, for having me on board your esteemed program. I'm very grateful indeed. I had no wish to get involved within what's called ufology, but the main consensus with the development of this started in the year 1989. In fact, even earlier than that, when my brother and I, my identical twin brother Ronald and I, were very young. We were 13 years of age, and we'd seen what people would assume is like one of those Foo Fighter things in broad daylight with our maternal grandmother. They used to live in a big house in Middlesex, and we used to spend all of our holiday periods with them. And this was observed by myself, my twin brother, and our grandmother. And it wasn't just a sighting from a distance. This thing, this silver orb, came in very, very close and across the clear blue sky and hung over our grandmother's head, and it was perfectly spherical in nature. There were no markings on it. It didn't make any noise. It was just weird. And of course, when we asked our grandmother what it was, she said the fairies have come to take a closer look at us. Well, we knew that there were no fairies in that sense of the word. I think she was trying to allay our fears, but she didn't seem to react to it. And then it moved towards the house, looked through, or was seeming to look through the windows to the house, going from the second to the third floor. And then it went across the roof, and we ran indoors and up there, a spiral staircase, and into the other room at the other side of the house, my grandparents' bedroom on the first floor. And we saw it moving very quickly away. But the onslaught of what I would call what is termed an alien abduction in the winter of 1989 in the village of Marston Moretain is where it all started for me. And because of the situation that occurred, we lived in a cul-de-sac in a relatively big house then, because we're in Kempston, Bedfordshire now, so we're not in such a big house now. But this house featured a downstairs study and bedroom and a downstairs shower room that my brother and I shared because it was big enough. And then we had like the hall and then the kitchen, the kitchen diner and the conservatory. It's quite a big layout. And I have to relay this because this is what occurred, or it leads to how things developed. I'd come back from work. And it was in the winter of 1989, and I walked up the driveway, got into the house. There are frosted glass windows to the house, walked through to the hall, through the glass doors to the kitchen that were left open. And my sister was to my far left and my brother was in front of me. So he was in the dining area. So he wouldn't have had an access to the view of the hall of where I was now positioned, leaning back against one of the cabinets. Our dog was there as well. And I think we were just talking about things in general. I just wanted to get a cup of coffee down me because it was cold. And all of a sudden, the only way I can explain it is that there was this strange atmosphere. The dog began to react to it. It started to bark and growl, and I wondered what was wrong with him. And then, of course, the hairs on my arms started to come up. And my brother, who was standing in front of me, suddenly raised his head to the ceiling as though he was frozen. And he said, and these were his exact words, "There's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die." Well, there was certainly no earthquake. And at that particular point in time, our maternal grandmother was still very much alive. I couldn't make sense of it. And as he remained frozen there, I can't remember what my sister was doing, but we've spoken about this recently. She remembers it. She can't remember what happened to her in terms of time. She knew something was going on and what was being said. When I looked out to the hall and through to the frosted glass doors and the windows that I'd just come through the door, there was this light that started to come up to the drive. And I thought that our mother, who was working late, had arrived home from work early. I thought these were the car lights. They were white. And I was incredulous to see that this brightness started to increase intensity. And the dog, if I can explain this very poorly how I do it, the dog was really beginning to react to all of this. Of course, we know that animals have extrasensory perception, much stronger and more acuter than humans. And as I'm looking out to the glass, this light is intensified. And as unbelievable as it may sound, it seemed as though the glass then began to become pliable, as though it was softening. That's impossible. But this was occurring as I'm standing there and my brother's in front of me, still frozen, looking up at the ceiling. And then I see what I can only describe as this small, diminutive, 3-foot tall being, all dressed in black, like a one of those like wetsuits, I guess, you know, a black tight fitting wetsuit. But it had this large, what I thought was like, it looked like a motorcycle helmet on its head. It wasn't a motorcycle helmet. It was much larger in proportion to its body. And it literally stepped through the glass and ahead into, or disappeared into, our study stroke bedroom. So from my vantage point, that's where it went. And then immediately the light went, the door returned back to normal. My brother snapped out of his trance. And then all of a sudden I saw this thing, whatever it was, run across from the left of the corner of the house, across the hall and up the stairs, because the stairs are hidden through a wall, obviously. That's where it went. Didn't go into the sitting room because I'm sure it made a beeline for the stairs. And I said, there's an intruder in the house. And then I yelled, there's an intruder in the house. And I picked out the biggest knife that I could find from the kitchen drawer. And then we went looking for this thing and we couldn't find it. And I remembered that night I broke down because I never experienced anything like this before. I've, you know, who on earth is going to understand, let alone believe, what's just happened? But in the early hours of that morning, something even more bizarre occurred. And this is what led me primarily into the many decades of research into the abduction phenomena, the UFO or UAP phenomena, as they call it as well. In the early hours of the morning, I found myself floating on my back in exactly the same position of the hall, because our room was downstairs. There was an upstairs part as well, to where this creature had come through. I was hovering 3 feet off the ground and on my back, and I couldn't move. And I thought, you know, is this a sleep paralysis? Am I, you know, is there some kind of something? But I was aware, fully consciously aware that I was in this position and couldn't move. But there seemed to be some kind of alternative force that now started to pull me through on my back the kitchen glass doors. And as I'm coming through, I'm thinking, this is impossible. How on earth am I able to transverse through solid matter? But it's happening. And I see the dog in the corner asleep. And then I'm being dragged around to the front of the kitchen, the other side of the kitchen doors, through to we had a big conservatory, then through to the conservatory doors, out into the patio, because we had a big pond and a long garden with an aviary. And I'm being pulled outside. And then as I come outside to the patio, it's dark. I'm being turned around almost in a kind of standing position, but I'm still hovering 3 feet off the floor. And I'm thinking, this is impossible. This can't happen. But it's happening. And there's a part of my mind which is trying to regulate this feeling of assault, or in terms of like being taken out of my room. And I don't know what the hell was going on. When I looked up at the sky, I was met by an array of loads of UFOs that seemed to be moving through the sky. And there was one object that remained stationary, a large spherical shaped object that was like a gray color. As soon as I connected with that with my eyes, I felt myself being pulled up. You know, like when you're on a roller coaster and you're just going to make that dip before it jumps, your stomach rolls. That's the feeling I got, but I was being pulled towards it very fast. And then bang, that was it. There are 2 more parts to this. I won't go on too long about this. I woke to find myself in a very small room. It seemed to be medical within its field. It was quite dark, but also quite steamy, quite hot. And from where I can still see it, or like it happened yesterday, we're talking about back in 1989, I find myself laying embarrassingly naked and strapped to a hard bed. And I can see ahead of me that there is some light coming to the left. So there must have been some kind of opening, which I found later there was. When I looked to my right, this is where I lost it, and taking a long time to try and work out what this was about. And there was another researcher who's put some pointers together with regards to it. There were 3 tall, well-built reptilians. Well, I'd never seen a reptilian before. I had never encountered them. I've got nothing to do with them. And we're still puzzled as to where they go. You'll have researchers telling you the whys and hows and wheres. We don't know, but they were there. They were standing to my right, and it horrified me because as they were looking at me, I felt powerless. I felt there was no form of empathy. The emotions that I got from them was nil. It was just as though I was a slab of meat on the table I was strapped to because I couldn't move. And at that point, I also discovered, embarrassingly, that there was a device that had been inserted into the lower abdominal region. And I felt it kind of pulsating within the stomach or bowel region because it felt organic inside. And at that point, I started to scream because I wanted them gone. I wanted this out of me. I didn't understand where I was, what was going on. And immediately there was a gray. This is incredible, isn't it? There was a small gray that came through that kind of like the other side to the left where the light was, seemed to appear from there. And it was a 3-foot thing, seemed to be more cream in color than a gray. When I looked, these guys had gone and the implement, whatever it was being retracted mechanically. I didn't see anything pulling it out. It was just almost like it was a mechanical thing. And the straps were released and the gray ordered me to dress. It was cold, but it ordered me to dress. So I got my things on the floor, I dressed, and I was to follow it through to this corridor. And it was much more lighter in this area. I just wanted to get out. I didn't know where I was, what was going on, what had just occurred. I just wanted out, and when you try and pinch yourself like this isn't happening. And yet you think, I've got to just get out of here because this is madness. This is like the worst nightmare. We came to what I thought was a wall. And I remembered the gray looking at me as if to say, get out. It's like, the wall turned into an opening. I didn't see the door open. It was just like open. And I could see the village from a great height. We were above the village. And below me, this is the last part now that's quite interesting, was a smaller spherical device hovering by our conservatory. So I knew we were at a height, and it was starting to become morning. So from the time I was taken to the time that I awoke, obviously some hours had passed. And I started to get upset with the gray and thought, you just want me to jump? I mean, heights aren't my thing. And I felt this push. And as I came out of whatever this thing was, there were 2 grays beside me, which I was told not to look at. Now, I thought that was quite strange because I'd seen one of them up there that I just encountered. Why wasn't I to look at these 2 as I came down to the ground? The last part is that when I came to the ground, I was really shocked by the last part of what I saw in front of me. These guys had cleared off. It's almost as if I'm not to look back. I've got to look forward. So there's this other gray. And this one is clothed. This one is very interesting because it still haunts me, the way he stood there. He was slightly taller than the one I'd seen, and indeed a little bit more bulkier. He was about 4 foot in height. He wore what I can only describe as a pointed hat that seemed to be quite smart, that came in configuration to the back of the neck piece. He wore a one-piece uniform, like a khaki uniform. He had knee-length boots. He had his arms folded across his chest, and his face came to a point, but he looked not like a classic gray. He looked more human, if that makes sense, but he did have the big eyes. But he was really angry with me, like looking at me like and I felt in the area of where they call the solar plexus, it felt like I'd been punched there, and I wanted to punch him. I wanted to, because of the violation of what I'd been through. and also of what they'd done, I wanted to punch him. It was like I felt this real anger and this rage come in me, but I couldn't move. Whatever they'd done to me, I couldn't move. I was suspended. So I thought, I'm going to ask this thing a question. I call him Noddy. Noddy is a creation from the British author Enid Blyton. But he wasn't like Noddy. He just appeared like animated plastic, seemed to frighten me. And I thought I'll ask him a question. My mind is on overload, sorry. And I'm like, right, I'm going to ask him a question. I can't punch him, but I need to ask him a question. And I knew that if he could answer that question, I would know the secret of how they, whatever they are, do this. I said to him, how the hell am I able to get through locked and bolted doors? How is that possible? And immediately upon me asking that question, he raised his head slowly upwards like this to the underneath of the craft, like that, looking up at it. And then he started to rasp in this unintelligible, what I would call like synthesizer sounds. It reminded me of the old voice synthesizer my twin brother and I had with our ZX81. We had a voice synthesizer, and he just froze like this as this contortion of mixed verbal sounds. And when I started to come through the glass of the conservatory, I could see him frozen there like that. And I came through very quickly through to the kitchen doors, through the hall, and then straight into my body, and bang. When I came in, I woke up, I had a nosebleed. I had to go and sort myself in the bathroom. The next day, I had 3 triangular marks behind my right ear. That's another story with the doctors in years to come. I had 3 marks on my right arm. The ones here have gone. We tried to take them with a Polaroid developing camera, but every time we tried to take the picture of them, they wouldn't come out. They would not develop. I had intense nosebleeds in the right nostril for a couple of years. The doctors were going to cauterize, but they stopped. And needless to say, I found it hard to walk. Now, just to add emphasis to this, all these years later, another researcher called Pierre Sabac has pointed out that whatever this Noddy character was doing, he seemed to be mimicking what my brother had done earlier that night. Because my brother went into a trance and looked up at the ceiling and spoke some unintelligible words that we could understand. There's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die. And he seemed to be replicating what my brother was doing in some strange way. So this then led to me trying to work out on a theoretical level, are they real? Is this really happening? Where do they come from? What are they interested in? These greys. And of course, then in 1996, the only time I had what I can only describe as a download, the only way I could describe that to you is that I'm very black and white. I'm very grounded, very black and white. But it was a feeling as though I'd been giving some information that was as clear. And I remember I was at work, it was about the greys, about the program. It's only theoretical, and I'm open to all forms of speculation. But it told me about the issues of cloning and also of the ideas of the greys' interest in being spiritually damned, as it were, and trying to find a passage back through to creation through this hybridization program. So in 1996, I wrote this article. It was published in a magazine that was quite well known then called Alien Encounters. And I was so honored that they called it revolutionary within its speculation. And it is only speculative in nature, because as I said, I'm open to all fields of theory and debate. But I think and feel from my understanding, overall understanding, is that I don't think we're dealing with space men as in from another planet. I think we perhaps are looking at something that has qualities of an interdimensional nature. And this fascinates me. And could you imagine also, when my first UFO book was published by Kapabam Publishing Limited, I think it was in 2009, Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena, when I wrote about the abduction, they retracted the part in there about the reptilians and also the anal probe, because they felt that there was no way that people would understand that. But thankfully, I'd had that story published in a magazine before, in Matthew Williams' magazine. It was Truth Seekers, I think it was. So, saving grace that happened there, wasn't it? So, in theory, that's the only abduction that I remembered. There may have been some more, but I will not state, oh, I'm an abductee or whatever, because I can only recall one. I know that there could possibly have been another one many, many years later. But of course, the events that surrounded that were very strange. But I have seen UFOs at close range, and the last was magnificent on the 9th of April 2016 at 11:15 p.m. at night. So this, Daniel, is how I got involved with it.
Wow, that's quite a story.
It is, isn't it? And one that I was embarrassed to come forward with, but I had then, of course, this singularity seems to touch people, all of us in many ways. When you've been touched by it, it's almost like a drug. You can't let it go. And I then joined a UFO group, and I was, well, I mean, there are some people who, not being disrespectful, they're away with the fairies every 5 minutes of the day. I wanted to find the truth of what we were dealing with, and with regards to the phenomena, with regards to what UFOs were, where they came from, and subsequent to that, also the occupants. Now, this is very interesting about the Greys because they're very elusive in nature. And I wonder whether or not that we're dealing with a force or an intelligence which is very old, extremely old, even older than ourselves in some respects, although, you know, that is merely theoretical in nature. But it's the feeling that I had. But one of the things I found, Daniel, is that after that experience in 1989, the winter of 1989, I can still see it all as clearly as it happened yesterday. No, and I will never change an iota of it. You know, people say, did you see this? Did you see that? I'm like, no, I can only report what I saw. I can even still see the medical room. Well, if you want to call it a medical room, I can't prove that it was. So, you know, I think and feel that these events, as they transpire with any one of us, is affixed within the mind and a blueprint that will remain there forever. But we're still puzzled as to the hows and whys and the nature surrounding it.
Although it wasn't a good experience for you back then.
No.
would you rather not experience this, or do you say it was a good thing now?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like anything, isn't it? When we've been through a bad experience, you know, whether it be something really horrible, we seem to become more appreciative, I think, of getting out the other end alive and grateful. I'm not saying that, you know, that whatever they were doing to me would have killed me, but I think in some respects, after all these years, I think there's a lot more involved with this. And this is why I understand that, you know, we've pigeonholed alien encounters, UFOs, cryptozoology, ghosts, power, all that type of thing into their own little boxes. But my understanding is that the singularity appears to connect with us or integrate within us on a very personal level of the psyche. And this is very interesting because it tells me categorically that it's changed me. And it's changed my view of life, of continuation of soul, of consciousness beyond this realm. It's afforded me an understanding also that we are not the only intelligences upon this planet. And I know people say the same old thing, you know, it's just like tagging birds and studying them, or animals, that type of thing. But I think that belittles our species somewhat, because we are vastly intelligent, very creative. And when we look at the Greys, they seem to lack these attributes that we have. And I think that's very interesting. And I also, if I may just impose here, there are several theoretical aspects that we can take with regards to the Greys. People will tell you what they know and what they feel they are, but we have to be open. We know about AI technology. We know about us from the future. We know about a lot of things. But the way that I saw them is that with regards to us, the question of our heritage, our spiritual heritage, and as a natural creative process coming through the womb, and having memories and creating memories that I think can fill our journey is important, that perhaps we reconnect back to the Godhead that we're all part of to expand upon the process of creation. The greys may also indicate that they are us within our primordial development. After all, the human, the model of the human, I believe, was an infusion of genetic material and a creation from some other intelligence. I'm not saying the greys, but this is what's led me now into deeper areas. It's like going down the rabbit hole, isn't it? But we have to look at all forms of speculation, because by pigeonholing yourself and saying it's this when we really have no idea, and I don't, we can only build upon certain models and extend upon them in our search for the truth.
You know, not too long ago, when I was not as open-minded as I would consider myself now,
yes,
my alarm went off when I heard the words reptilian, or the thing with the probes. But now I came to the conclusion that we have to deal with it.
Well, the difficulty, the difficulty, Daniel, is knowing what part they play within the UFO field investigations, because most people and researchers are quite happy to deal with the greys as their own lot. Then you get some people who will tell you that the reptilians are this or that. I do not know. All I can tell you is what I saw. And all I can explain is that the appearance of these guys, and I call them guys endearingly now, although it wasn't funny at the time, they were very masculine. You wouldn't mess with them. They were devoid of empathy. It was as though I was just merely a piece of meat. It was, for me, empty. There was no way of any connection, and nothing was explained to me. They didn't come up to me and say, "Hey, Philip Kinsella, we're abducting you," because they're nothing, absolutely nothing. It was a savage taking. Now, I had one researcher from America many years ago telling me that the only reason I experienced a bad abduction is because I'm a negative person, because I question everything and I'm not gullible. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm very black and white and grounded. And I said, I'm the least negative person around, I can assure you. But we do know that the reptilians do seem to have some kind of connection with us within our perhaps evolution, because we do have part of a reptilian brain. And I think the problem lies, Daniel, is the way that the system that we serve has continuously downs down any mention of the truth. I think that this is why we have a problem on our hands now, because the original model of perhaps our genus has been hidden, and that a sanitized version has been brought forward, and now we're beginning to see a increase in this plethora of activity, as though this intelligence or force or whatever is behind it is trying to get through to us to say, you've been stagnated for so long, we need to move you, and the only way to move you is through a little bit of pain and through a little bit of understanding. That's the only way to get through to you, because you're not moving. And I think now that seeing the system, the war of good and evil is very much evident, and with us as humans, that is. Mind you, it wouldn't surprise me if perhaps some of them weren't quite human, those at the top that we can't see, and we all know about that. I think most of our politicians are aliens.
Agreed.
You've got to have a sense of humor. But, seriously, I do feel that this is why the publishers, Kapelban, John Day, he's passed over now, he was a good man. He said, if I'm going to publish this book, we have to retract that, because people will not be able to understand it. And I said to John, I said, well, John, if they can't understand it, well, neither can I. I can only report what happened. I can't replace it with someone else's narrative or what they think happened. It just was. So I think that trying to look at the UFO phenomena in the nuts and bolts aspect, but also we have to take into consideration the not so nuts and bolts aspect, and how the greys are able to perhaps extract us from the real essence of what we are and bring that into their reality, rather like a near-death experience. So when the soul leaves the body, the world that they enter is as real as the one they left behind, in fact more real. Communication is done through telepathy. And if the body is diseased in some way, when the soul is returned from the near-death experience, on at most cases, the body is healed. And I think because the soul or consciousness of the individual, because it's departed temporarily and moved to its original source of origin, when it's returned, its field is corrected, and of course it will. It's like, you know, bringing taking an old battery out, bringing a new one into it, and it repairs. It's all functioning correctly. So I think this is what led me into looking into not just ufology, but also consciousness, the afterlife, which is very important, especially of what we are. So it's been a journey.
And I think the UFO topic, UFO phenomenon, and the paranormal, as we call it, is connected.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And 1996, my article that was published in Alien Encounters was called Spirits in a Material World. And it dealt with the abduction hypothesis with regards to how these beings enter our realm. They come through walls and doors, they enter through solid material. And I think that, you know, if they did have some kind of technology, why don't they just beam the person up to their ship without having the issues or problems of bringing themselves, sometimes most notably grays, around the individual either before or after the event? It seems as though these specters need to be in close proximity to the individual to create this link, or this conscious link with one to the other. And I do agree with you. I think that looking at the greys, you know, you've got people saying that they're evil and people saying that they're good, they're love and light. But I like to just walk that path and examine and explore those areas of what people have been reporting. And the way that I see it is that the extraterrestrial hypothesis appears to not want to integrate with us on a conscious level. That means to say, like you and I, Daniel, are talking with one another now. It feels to me as they want to deliberately keep themselves away from us. And this is interesting. Maybe they're working towards their own grand experiment. Maybe they are the gods of old that are creating a new race, a new genus. Maybe they are demons. You know, they're people of daren't mention that word at all within ufology, but we have to be open to it. It's a possibility. Maybe they are AI construct from another universe or dimension. Maybe they are us in our primordial state before we became human. You know, in terms of this, because when we look at the greys, they do look like a developing, you know, child in the womb. But certainly, I mean, these areas of contemplation are very interesting, and I think are fascinating. And of course, this is what propels me forward in searching for that truth of what we are, where we come from, what they are, why there lies within the system we serve by our very own people who must know something. Definitely.
You are a well-known author of many books now, but the way to become one was very hard. I heard in another interview, I heard you talking about it. In another interview, you said that it was very hard to find a publisher. There were over 700 rejection letters.
Correct, that's right.
And in addition, there were people who are very negative about this whole issue. And there are negative reviews, bad comments, and maybe there are even people who tell you directly to your face what they think of you.
Yes, and you know, I pity them, but I also bless them, and I send love to them. I can only speak from experience. What happened was that my brother and I, and this was the really nasty sting in the tail, we wanted to be writers of fiction, of children. We created a children's character called Magnus the Micromut. We illustrated the books. We did all of that. And we are authors also of children's novels, about 4 or 5 of them, I think, and a science fiction novel called The Ungodly Agenda that was endorsed by the author of Cocoon. They made it into a Hollywood film, David Saperstein. So you will invariably, and I have been attacked, and I think that it used to affect me. I mean, you know, you hear a lot about these trolls and bullying, and it's more or less the same thing. And you know, me to claim that I have been abducted by aliens, you get people that, you know, cross that line with regards to making out that you're this or you're that, or it's terrible. And this is coming from our very own species. And this is my argument, because, you know, when we now, all these decades later, when I look at it, people in the world prefer half-truths or lies. They don't want the truth. They want to believe in half-truths or lies, or they want to hide behind a keyboard and become a keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
Come out and face me and speak to me, and I will tell you the truth. But it's they can't have that, you see. So 600 to 700 rejections. There was also another very influential lady who is no longer with us on this side of life, very influential, who helped me and my brother for 33 years, letter each year. And that to me was, I was proud as punch, a very top high lady, one of the top. And that is something I will always cherish and love. And another author, Dame Barbara Cartland, who tried to help me and my brother many years ago, we had her letters. We had the influence of many people who loved us, and as we loved them. But the UFO field, well, I mean, that was my first book to be accepted by a publisher, was Reaching for the Divine. It dealt with about the spirit world, communication with the other side. And then, of course, then followed Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena, which came out in 2009. And then, of course, subsequent to that, another book, Sky Crash. And so, yes, invariably, you will get beat, you'll get hurt. And that is horrible, because all you're trying to do is present yourself as an honest person. But unfortunately, when we go back to humans, you know, as I am as well, I'm not an alien. As humans, it's so sad and it's upsetting to think that there may be other people like myself, or not quite like myself in terms of gender or character. Like I'm a male, there could be young lasses out there that want to make something of their life. You know, I do and will not tolerate people who attack others and, you know, think it's fun. But that's our species, and one wonders then why we have made no progression in terms of communicating with these other intelligences. And I think it's possible that they integrate, when I mean they, these other intelligence, with people who they seem to connect with. It doesn't make us special, because we're all unique. So yes, it's been a very hard journey and a very trying one. And when I think back, oh, I don't know. I just think, well, I think I've got more strength than I know. And Philip Mantle, one of Britain's top ufologists, has been a mentor to me and my twin brother, an absolute mentor to us, a good man who's believed in us and our work. And, you know, we met him some years ago now, and he's kind of like taking us, shaking us, and wrapped us up and got us out there, you know, so it's wonderful.
I have talked to Philip Mantle also. He's a great guy.
Oh, yes, yes.
Great guy. You know, the problem when it comes to these topics is that what people think is mainly controlled by the mainstream media.
Oh, yes.
So they teach people to think this is all crap and funny, and that's the big problem.
Yes, that's right.
Over here, it is often so that if one sees a report about the topic in the television, it's represented rather humoristically. People who talk about their experiences are exposed to the public as crazy. This is a big problem. It's a big problem.
Yes, tin hat wearing people, you know, and I think that we all know, digging deeper into the rabbit hole, going down even further into that rabbit hole. Conspiracy theory, as we all know, is a psychological weapon imposed by the system to turn the finger of doubt upon the inquiring mind. What the system does, and I call it the system, those not the puppets within governmental, they're just puppets. They bow, and, you know, of course they'll do anything for their masters. They'll do anything, you know, because it's all money and power, isn't it? But it's all an illusion at the end of the day. But yes, it's controlled. You can see the contrivance. You can see the way that the system subtly infiltrates the minds of millions of people. I mean, you have, you know, certain media outlets that continuously promote this or that, and a false narrative. You're not being able to see both sides. So when it comes to the UFO phenomena, or certainly in terms of psychic exploration, you will discover on some sites where they have it all worked out. What they don't want to happen is they don't want us to have a brain. They don't want us to think for ourselves, because if we think for ourselves, we may become dangerous. Dangerous to them, not dangerous to our good folk or the people that we're linked with down here, but dangerous to a system that is in need to control and subjugate through fear. This is no conspiracy. This is not a conspiracy. We've seen, and I won't mention anything here because we're not allowed to, because we're gagged. You've seen certain events evolve recently and how things are developing further. And I think that the system that we serve has now got a problem, especially when the admittance of UFO or UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, more scientific acronym, has now been created. I still prefer UFO, but the admittance by the Pentagon through the Navy, and it's like, oh, it's all gone a little bit quiet, but they admitted. And I think that what they're doing is they're stalling because they don't know how to tell the people. Now, if we go back to Roswell, I believe that happened. I believe, just after Kenneth Arnold's famous sighting of, his UFOs, but Roswell, something did crash there. Whatever it was, defied all forms of exploration. And get this, first of all, they released a statement in the newspapers stating, oh, they were in possession of a flying disc. And then they changed it, as we all know, to nothing more than a weather balloon. So secret, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, if they had a brain, so secret that not even the army were aware that it was out there. It was Matt Brazel who went to the authorities to report it. If that had been a top, weather balloon, a mogul weather balloon, they'd all been, watching it. They would have wanted to know where it come down. It was that secret. So that was the birthing, I think, of conspiracy. And I think now the system we serve has done us no favors because it's got itself into a corner. This phenomena hasn't gone away. It won't. It's still ever present. If you look at the statistics and reports in the United States and all over the world, UFOs are seen every single day. You won't see them reported on national television. Of course you won't, because that's an admittance that they're real or something's there that defies our explanation, as it were. So what's going on? And I think now, if the system did say, okay, folks, we've got to break the silence and tell you the truth, UFOs or UAPs do exist, but we have to tell you that we don't know where they come from, we can't control them, and then they come in at any point at any time. So yeah, there we are.
There we are.
That's it. That's where we are at this moment in time. And it's a war, not just with, the UFOs, because I don't think that they intend to harm us. At least, it's very rare that we hear of accounts of people being harmed by them, only in terms of like some forms of, dare I say it, human mutilation. It's very few and far between. Radiation and all that when you get too close to certain objects or something like that. But there's definitely, I think, a war going on. And I think that this war is now with our very own people at the top, because as researchers like yourself, all of us, we are asking them, be honest, open up what you know, share it, let us work together. I had this link with Parliament many years ago. Well, not that many years ago, I think a couple of years ago. Nigel Ross created NUFORS, which is the National UFO Reporting Service here in England. And we wrote to Parliament because we wanted Parliament to come forward to link with us so that we could all sit around a table and work together, work as a unit with honesty and truth. Let's put everything on the table and look at the UFO phenomena in all its glory and work as a team. Well, we got silence back. And I think that just about says everything.
I often say we know so much about the UFO subject, and we know so many accounts of people telling us about their experiences. We hear about abductions, sightings, close encounters. There are people who tell us that they have spoken with aliens. And you told your story also today, and even some who say that they are in regular contact with them. But in the end, we don't really know anything. That's what I always say.
Well, there are two aspects to that. And, it depends which area you want to investigate. When you're dealing with consciousness, it is multi-complexed. We understand about the art of clairvoyance. We understand about remote viewing. That is true. We know about that. Astral projection. The only problem with a lot of this, unless there is evidence to substantiate the claims, there's no way of really measuring it. So, I think that I base my research upon those incredible experiences that people have had, that I've been astounded by them. I'm not taking that away from those love and light individuals or the Galactic Federation or anything like that. My research is slightly different in terms of the rawness. So I'm looking at the rawness of the experience, the rawness of the phenomena, to try and get to the roots of it. But as one author wrote, it seems to be an impossible science. And I think now we need to look into quantum reality, into what makes us what we are, what makes the universe what it is, because these beings or these objects seem to defy all forms of explanation. The question is, why is our own military factions so readily wanting to secrete all of this evidence? Now, if you're keeping something hidden, if you're hiding something, it's either one of two things. You don't want the public to know about it, or there's something not good about it. Or is the system that we're serving protecting us against something we don't know? So, in terms of that, in terms of trying to establish, the love and light nature of contact, but there again, you see, looking into spiritualism, looking at mediums, dealing with, and I've got to say it here, I'll give an example, spirit guides, using consciousness as a way to communicate with these beings. And I have done this on a number of occasions with the spiritual work that I have done. And a medium that used to work for the FBI in America, she used to work in cold soul cases here in England. She taught me. She said to me, "You have a North American Indian as a spirit guide." And I thought, oh, there we are. It has to be a North American Indian. Good Lord. Good. So years ago, I meditated and I said, "So what's your name then?" This North American Indian. And I had this image of wolves within my mind and a North American Indian playing a flute. And I thought, wolf song. Is that your name? You have to prove it to me. Nothing happened after that until the next day I went to work, and this Canadian guy came in, and lovely guy, and he was wearing a leather jacket, and underneath his leather jacket, for the first time ever, was a t-shirt, and on the t-shirt was these North American Indians, not these wolves, and a North American Indian playing a flute on the ground. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've had a sign. The question was I creating that? Had I created that in my mind that now become manifest? Or is that an external force that was doing it in request to what I'd asked? So when we're dealing with consciousness, there are so many aspects that we can't yet narrow down or pull, say this is what it is. An experiment as well in Rendlesham that I performed with my brother and Susan, a good friend of ours, on the 8th of June, 1998, clarified this point clearly. So is this intelligence or the plethora of it connecting with us? I think it is. And I think sometimes it wants to clarify its existence. So are we dealing with something evil? I'm not so sure. I think there are evil guys out there, like there are evil humans we have here. I think there are also good guys out there as well too. I haven't yet met them, or maybe I just was on the wrong page with them. That's the only way I can explain it. Maybe they were having a bad day. You've got to laugh about it. And that's where people criticize you. Oh, he has a sense of humor. My goodness, we're human. We are human. If you don't have a sense of humor with it, then what's the point? So yeah.
It's all about bringing the puzzle pieces together. I used to say that all the time. I told you before, I talked to Eric von Däniken, and he told us about the ancient alien theory.
Oh, I believe that. Yes.
Yeah, you're into.
I believe it.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, I do. I believe it, because when we look, in the Sunday school version of creation, Going into the Anunnaki, there was also the brilliant work of Zeshai Zishron, and of course his Earth Chronicles, and looking into the cradle of our genus. And, I always thought as a kid, and I remembered, I wasn't reading Eric von Daniken's brilliant books then. I started reading around about 8, 9, 10. I was always down the library trying to fish out any UFO book I could get my hands on. And of course, then in the libraries, you had a very rare few selection, not like today. But I remembered thinking, where did I come from? And my mother used to say, from the womb. And I'm like, no, where did I come from? And then you get older and you're thinking, well, what created us? How did this all happen? You have two narratives. One is the cold scientific analysis through natural selection, which stinks. I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense to me. And then you had you also had the religious interpretations, which was a little bit too airy-fairy, not much in the way of substantiating evidence. And then you have the alternative theory, Eric von Daniken and other researchers, in arguing that it appears that we had been created through the infusion of perhaps the hominid, or what was developed as the hominid, into what we represent today, the Homo sapien. So I've always believed that we were created by something. As I said before, I don't think it was the Greys, but I think there was some other form of intelligence that, created us. And this will make you laugh, Daniel. We were created as slaves, weren't we, for the gods, as we call them? Well, not much has changed today, is it? We're still slaves to a system. We're still servants to a system.
Yeah, I was about to say that, yeah, we are still slaves.
We are still slaves. These people at the top think that we're their servants. They talk about us as though we're vermin. Go out there and get a job. It's terrible. People don't want to work for pennies, or certainly not in line with inflation now, and they don't want to do a job that's just monotonous. Some people have a passion and drive to do a work they'd love to do, but it's not out there. And these people at the top are all helping themselves to the money and the power, and of course it's easy for them to dictate, but take that money and that power away from them and you'll certainly see how they think then. I can assure you of that.
I would love to do this as my day job.
Yes,
I would love to, but this is not a job that the upper ones want to see.
No,
it spreads consciousness to the people, and what they don't want is to have conscious people.
Correct. That's right. And they want us to be sleepers. And I think, the way I'm seeing this, there have been a few parts in my life where I felt, that the system will crush us all. Like George Lucas created a film, THX, whatever it was called, a police state with people that are, being brainwashed. Logan's Run, where the people are being killed at the age 30 because they don't want old people, they want to control. And I think a lot of the film industry seems to encapsulate most of these stories, and spookily, in some instances we can see that the narrative may not be far from the truth. And I think that the problem that the system has is there's too many of us. That's not our problem. It's not your fault or the family's fault. It's just that the earth itself is beginning to feel the strain, and that these so-called echelons, who are probably commanded by higher levels of intelligences that perhaps will befuddle us completely and maybe separate from what we understand, they're following orders or an agenda. And this is why we're now not allowed to speak about certain topics, which I won't mention here. We've been silenced. They're trying to wrap things up. So the way I'm seeing it is that they're trying to take away humor. They're trying to take away love. They're promoting fear and control. And this disables us completely. It disables consciousness, and it also disables the body's etheric energy, as it were. So, but I think there's a lot of people out there, yourself as well as myself, who are strong enough to be able to keep going and believing what you're doing and looking into and past the lies and deception. And I think that's, we can become self-empowered within ourselves, and something the system cannot control. And that's why the system is so intent in years ago, and still today, I'm sure, in knowing what you're about, Why are you different from everyone else? Why aren't you complying? Why are you looking into all of this stuff here? What are you looking at? And they'll start to do a search to find out what you know. They do it with everyone, I think. They give awards and medals and all sorts of honors to people who are good citizens and following the official narrative, of course, but it's an illusion, because at the end of the day, the truth is what counts, that we are not alone and never have been. And it's about time this, very ancient system needs to wake up, because people are waking up, but the system doesn't want to. It wants to carry on with the same old laborious wheel going round of slavery, and it is, and control and fear and domination, and don't look there, don't look here. We're going to tell you what's real. That's not real. That's not real. Keep your nose to the ground. Keep paying your taxes. Keep waving your flags, doing what you're told, and then die. But they die as well. Their time comes to an end physically as well.
System does everything it can to keep our minds and our thoughts focused on what they wanted to, where they wanted to be. We have energy costs going through the roof. We have the war. We
Control.
have the virus. We have this. We have that. So everybody is worries about, how do I pay my bills?
Yes.
Will the war spread? Will this, will that, will the virus spread again? Will this? So they don't want to focus on topics like the topics we talk about.
That's right. Well, you see the crown, the British crown, when one is made a queen or a king, that it is not them. They are serving the crown. And I think in terms of, I'm not talking about the royal family here, I'm talking about those echelons at the top of the social pyramid of control. They are serving their crown as well. Doesn't matter who gets in, the few initiates. They are and will implement whatever is governing at the top. So it's clear to see that there is a war, maybe a silent one, and it's quite disturbing. And I know that people have their own ideas about this, about, what's going on with regards to these darker forces, because people at the top, the rich ones, most of them we know are into Satanism, and they may be able to summon a lot of these darker spirits that can come into our reality. I'm not saying this is all of the UFO film, I'm saying what they're linked with. So it appears to me that there is some kind of silent war, and we kept in this darkness. But I do joke and say, Daniel, that when my time comes to an end, and when I get to the other side, there are two things I'm going to ask them. I'm going to say, what on earth was that all about? And then I'm going to ask for a refund.
I'm in. Yeah.
Definitely.
What can we expect from you in the near future? What are you currently working on?
Yeah, I've just finished a new book that will be out next year. I'm not going to release the title of the book or say what the title is, but it is another UFO book that will be released next year by Philip Mantle's Flying Disc Press, because he asked me if I could write another book. The previous one was You, the Public Deceived, The Grand UFO Deception, and Philip Mantle's also reprinted Sky Crash Throughout Time, which deals with the Rendlesham UFO incident, but not the 1980 incident, because a lot of that work is teamed up with Brenda Butler, who was the original investigator into the 1980 event and had subsequently written a book with Jenny Randles and Dot Street called Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy, which came out by Neville Spearman and Limited in 1984. So this book, Sky Crash Throughout Time, is kind of like an overview of what Brenda had been researching before and after the major event with the US military back at Rendlesham. So, and I think most people, won't like it because they only want the 1980 event. And unfortunately, when you get involved in a celebrated UFO case, it comes with a lot of controversy, and you don't want to step on toes. I thought, well, I would definitely have stepped on some toes there. Most of the guys linked were there. Lovely guys. Colonel Charles Holt, lovely gentleman, met him, had dinner with him, and of course Jim Peniston, an awesome guy as well. So that was very interesting. And you'll find also that with all of us, what I discovered is that there seems to be a strange case of synchronicity which gets connected with our lives, with the work that we're doing. It's when you look back, you think, oh my Lord, how did I get from A to B? Because I remembered reading about the Rendlesham event in the national newspapers when I was a kid. And then I'm up there doing research and then connect with one of the original investigators, Brenda Butler, and then we decide to write a book. Oh, it was incredible. It's like, good Lord, talk about synchronicity, eh?
Philip, that was very interesting. I enjoyed talking to you a lot.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and I've enjoyed it. Mind you, I don't think you've had much of a word in edgeways, have you?
I'm here to listen. I want my guests to tell a story. I often have people saying you don't ask enough and you don't talk enough, and I say I'm here to listen. I want to hear the story.
Yes, well, yeah, and I will tell you that the 9th of April 2016 sighting of the 3 lights are in triangular formation at 11:15 p.m. here in Kempston, Bedford, have been witnessed by other people. They've done some programs on it, and also has now fresh information that they have been tracked coming from the Isles of Scilly. So that is fascinating and rewarding when you get witness testimony to kind of like verify and substantiate your claims. You know, but even whatever you bring to the table, there will still be people telling you it's this and it's that. When you have 3 massive cylindrical white objects in triangular formation hovering above your house with you outside by the car when you've come back from a meal late at night, and they're silently hovering over you, changes everything. People say, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? There's only one thing you're going to do, and that's what you intend to do. You can't change the narrative. It's the way it is.
Yeah. Hate is gonna hate. Potatoes gonna potato.
Agreed.